Yes.
Awesome. Throughout the history of the world, many facts have changed. Empires have risen and then fallen. Religions and gods have risen and then fallen. But throughout all of history, one fact has remained true. Donald Trump really likes oil. All throughout history, Donald Trump has loved this this liquid gold, oil. And in today's prompt, we'll discuss a story involving Donald Trump and oil. The prompt is, will Venezuela's oil boost the US economy? And to understand this prompt, we have to understand the background of why this question is relevant right now. And then, after understanding that background, we'll talk about two separate approaches that could be used to use Venezuela's oil to boost the economy and compare and contrast them. So, let's get into it. What's the background to this whole story? Well, you may have heard on the news, the US kind of kidnapped the president of Venezuela. Nicolas Maduro, who had been in power for over a decade, was toppled by US special forces. His regime is not in place any longer, and he is in New York. So, with Maduro gone, this means that there will be major changes for Venezuela. You see, Venezuela is one of the most oil-rich countries in the world. The AP reported on January 6, 2026, that Trump plans to take advantage of this. It says that Trump plans to buy between 30 to 50 million barrels of oil at market price from Venezuela. This is in a recent deal reached by the US and Venezuela. So, the AP continues in their article, and Donald Trump said that if the new president of Venezuela fails to cooperate, and if she doesn't, quote, do what's right, unquote, she would face similar consequences that Nicolas Maduro, the kidnapped leader, faced. So, what we can clearly see here is that Trump intends for the US to begin getting oil from Venezuela. Trump also met with many large oil executives of companies like ExxonMobil and Chevron, to plan whether or not the US and what way the US would extract oil from Venezuela. ABC News on January 7, 2026 reported that Trump says that the US will let the oil flow from Venezuela and that it will be sold to US refineries. He says he will open the markets. Chris Wright, the US Energy Secretary, had a slightly different twist on it. He said that the US government would seize Venezuelan oil and sell it to companies. Trump also said that he may lift at least some sanctions, specifically oil sanctions on Venezuela, so it's easier to sell Venezuelan oil to US companies. So, what we've seen from these two articles is that in both of them, the US plans to get Venezuelan oil. But what you may have noticed is a disconnect in styles, in ways that the US government and that the US may get this oil. And what we'll see in the next 2 points of this speech is that the way we get oil from Venezuela will entirely determine whether or not it boosts the US economy and is a good idea. So, let's get into those two approaches. First of all, we have a federal approach. An approach where the federal government seizes oil from Venezuela and begins to sell it to US companies. This approach is represented by Trump's plan to buy or take 30 to 50 million barrels of oil from Venezuela. That is a federal approach because it's handled by the US government. To contrast that, there's a free market approach, which Trump also referred to in that ABC article, where he said that he would open the markets. So, let's look at these two proposals and see which one would actually boost the US economy. There's a constant theme of the government managing natural resources, and that is that it doesn't go that well. In fact, that's actually the reason that Venezuela has become such a weak regime, is that the government took over Venezuela's oil supply and used it for its own purposes, thus weakening the country. The reason for this is simple, and it's explained by Friedrich Hayek in his book The Road to Serfdom, which he wrote several decades ago. the famed economist Friedrich Hayek. In his book, he talked about the differences between centralized planning and decentralized law. Centralized planning, obviously, is when the government plans and directs the use of resources like the Venezuelan government has and like the US government may or may not in Venezuela. Then there's law directing people what to do. Now this is a completely different scenario where the country is ruled by law, because no one is directly telling the Venezuelan government or US government or people in either country what they need to do. Instead, laws show them what it would be good to do, and then people calculate based on the existing laws whether or not they would like to comply. So let's give an example of that, because that's kind of theoretical. So if there's a law that says that stealing oil results in punishment, then that may convince people not to steal oil. Or if there's laws about that whatever oil you manage to extract from the ground you keep, then that incentivizes companies to extract oil, at least where there's a profit to be made. That would be a free market principle, those sets of laws. So, the reason that those free market principles are more beneficial than a centralized government authority is not because planning is bad, because we hear government planning and we think that plans sound good. The real question is who plans better, individuals or the government? And the answer is that individuals and corporations plan better. So, looking at this whole scenario, we can only hope that the US does not seize Venezuelan oil and sell it on a government basis. Instead, we hope that Trump remains faithful to his promise to allow US companies to buy and extract Venezuelan oil, to open up the markets, and to meet with those energy executives. Only if the US does this will Venezuelan oil boost our economy.